phase wrestling reversals, upper body submissions, and sumigaeshi attacks, we'll get further defensive reactions in response to these forms of attack. And these feed us all the way back into the original part of the cycle, which was the strong initial leg lock attack. So everything begins with leg lock attacks, then we feed off the defensive reactions to those. As we get still further defensive reactions, we cycle back to leg locks. In this way, you can put your opponent in a thoroughly reactive mindset where they are constantly reacting and fearful of the major patterns of attacks which you employ against them, and will make you a devastating player. You will experience very high submission rates because of the high emphasis on upper body and lower body submissions, and as opponents fear those submission attacks, you will suddenly find that the methods of reversal taught in this video create unusually high success rates of scoring reversals and getting to top position and behind your opponent, working from guard. Now, I want to start this video off by looking at the idea of what's the big message of the new wave approach to guard play. You've seen my students come out and work in competition and have tremendous success from guard position. A lot of people focus on the technique that I show them, and there's certainly a lot to be said about that. But more than just technique, there's also an overall approach to guard play when we work without a gi, which is just as important for you to know as the technique itself. Everything we do from guard position is a response to a very obvious problem. When you switch from gi to no gi, there is a radical difference in the nature of gripping. Understand always that gripping is the foundation of grappling. Everything begins with grip. So if the gripping sequences and the very nature of gripping is different from one sport to another, you can expect some pretty substantial differences in the grappling behavior of the athletes from one sport to the other. Let's have a look at how this fleshes out. The fundamental difference is that the grips in gi competition are massively more robust and more plentiful than they are in no gi. Okay, let's have a look at this. If a guy is standing over me and I'm working from guard position, let's contrast grips to the wrist with and without a gi. Okay, if I get a 4-finger cuff grip inside my training partner's jacket and I do a good job of turning my hand palm up, you can see a distinct line of tension running through my training partner's arm that generates control all the way up to the shoulders. When he goes to yank away from me, it's not an easy thing. It's a very robust grip. This becomes even more robust when we start playing with a foot inside our training partner's bicep. At this point, Placido can't just yank out of the grip. It's not going to happen. Okay? If he gets out of this, it's because he knows how to get out of it. It's not just going to be him just pulling his hand free. There's a kind of tension that comes from this kind of play, which the moment you feel it, you're like, I don't think I can break that grip. This is true regardless of how we hold our legs in general. Okay, let's contrast that with a no-gi situation. Even if the guy is not even standing, he's down on 2 knees in a structurally weaker position. If I just grab a wrist, regardless of how I grab, underhand or overhand, a strong kid just vigorously yanks his hand, it's gone. Okay, it wasn't because I got weaker between now and then, it's because the very nature of gripping in no-gi is fundamentally weaker. Every grip I take on the wrist will have some kind of opening that my training partner can exploit, and if he's physically stronger than I am, or just slippery, we're deep into the match now, there's a lot of sweat, they can post on my body and just violently yank the hand out, they're just gone. Okay, so you can see there's a substantial difference in the strength of grips. Let's contrast now head control. Placido. Down the knees. The primary means of head control when we work with the jacket will always be cross lapel and straight lapel grips. These give huge amounts of control over my opponent's head. When he goes to pull away from me, he's just not going to do it. There's just so much strength in the grip. Placido can stand up to his feet, take a good posture and walk backwards, and the grip just won't break. We'll be able to put him down quite easily. Now let's contrast that with the no-gi situation, where I go in and take a collar tie on my training partner. I can use all my strength here, and it's just so easy for him to post on my elbow and take the hand away. Okay? If my opponent's standing, even more so. Now it's even easier for him. Okay, just a simple elbow post and he's gone. Let's contrast a single leg. He's standing. From here, I can use with the jacket my training partner's lapel, or I can go in and use the belt. When he goes to sprawl on me in this situation, there's no sprawl that'll break that grip. It's just a fantastically strong grip. And from here, we can complete it by getting across to a grip here on the inside of the pants, which will enable us to come up off the floor and drive even the strongest of opponents straight down to the mat. Okay? If I have a double leg, for example, facing me, if I grab a hold of my training partner's gi pants and he goes into a full sprawl, it's just such a strong grip. Okay, and from here, it's so easy for us now to come up and start putting people down. Let's contrast that with a one-handed grip without the gi. He goes into a full sprawl, and from here, yeah, it's a sprawl. It's strong, but nothing crazy. Okay, even if I lock my hands in here, there's going to come a point where he sprawls back and starts to manipulate my arms, and at some point, my grip's going to break. If he's standing over me and I go into the classic double leg here with hands behind, this is a pretty good grip. But even here, he goes into a full sprawl and gets over my head. There's going to be a time where my hands just slip, and it's all gone. Okay. Underhooks. A grip like so with an underhook. It's pretty easy for my opponent just to start pushing on my head, moving my head away, and then palming his elbows back in, and the underhook is gone. Let's contrast that with, facing this way, grips where I get a hold of my training partner's belt. Okay, that belt grip is unbelievably strong. He goes to pull away from me here. It's so easy just to pull someone back in using that grip. If he was able to pommel inside, it wouldn't mean anything because I still have my belt grip. He goes inside, it means nothing. That belt grip is just so strong. From here, you'll always be able to carry an opponent through into whatever technique you look for. As a general rule, the grips, particularly the grips to the extremities of the body, the head, the wrists, elbows, knees, ankles, are incredibly strong when we work with a gi. Got a guy standing over us, and I take a pant grip, and on my training partner, I'm not allowed to grip inside the pants, but I just take a regular pant grip. This is an incredibly strong grip here. Okay? When my opponent goes to pull away from grips like this, it's just not easy. It's an incredibly strong grip, as opposed to no gi situations, where if I just have a hand here, it means very little. Even if I take a full Achilles grip, it's better, but still an opponent can kick free. So the general rule is that as we go to grip the extremities of the body, the wrists, the elbows, the knees, the ankles, the head, you have significantly less robustness in the grips when we work without a gi versus with a gi. The general pattern is you can't hold grips for long. You can get grips, but you can't hold grips for long periods of time. The grips tend to be much more transitory, much less robust. And as a result, there has to be a much higher speed of grip play. As you lose a grip, you've got to gain a grip because you can't hold grips for long. So you have to go grip to grip to grip and move like so, as opposed to the gi work where we typically get a grip and work with a grip over extended periods of time. Now, that's the fundamental problem that we work with, that gripping is much less robust. What are we going to do in terms of solutions? Now, this is where things get interesting. What we notice is that there are some grips without the gi which are pretty damn robust. Okay, let's look, for example, at locked hand grips. When my hands lock around my opponent's legs and he goes into a sprawl, that's a very robust grip. Okay, you'll notice that locked hands around an opponent's waist, either in front of him or behind him, are very, very robust. Okay, it's hard for him to break away from these grips. They're strong. It's not impossible, but these are at the level of strength you'd expect from gi grips. So locked hands that cover both sides of an opponent's body are typically very strong. Locked hands on one side of the body are not quite as strong, but still pretty damn good. They're still not magic, and a guy can post and turn and slip, Okay, there is a slippage problem, so they're not as strong as controlling both sides of the body as they would be in a body lock, for example. But still, they're significantly stronger than just holding with one hand. As a general rule, locked hands are significantly stronger than unlocked hands. So there are certain grips where we get into an opponent, and if I can get to here, yep, that's a grip I can trust. Yep, that's a grip I can trust. Yep, that's a grip I can trust. Those locked hands provide insight. So what we typically find when we work without a gi is that if we're going to be effective working from guard play, is that we typically start with fairly weak transitory grips into standard jiu-jitsu moves where we almost get the move to work, but the grip fails in some fashion or form. Say, for example, we're here working with a training partner and I get wrist control and pull this guy in, okay? Could I really realistically expect to control a strong man's wrist in the 15th minute of a tough match when he's pulling back and away? Probably not. As I feel him go to yank out and away, I go in and catch, okay? Could I expect to hold this for long periods of time against a strong resisting opponent? Probably not. But this, I can expect to hold in control. Okay, this I can hold for long periods of time. So I'm controlling both sides of the body with locked hands. So the first big theme that we touch on as a solution to this problem is the idea of what we call two-phase takedowns, or two-phase sweeps rather. This is the idea that we use a jiu-jitsu style sweep with conventional grips to knock someone down into a compromised position. From that compromised position, where their balance is broken, their stance is broken, then we get to a grip that will actually last, and which we can use to finish a move. A locked double leg, a grip on our training partner's waist, etc. Okay? So say, for example, we have an opponent in front of us, I pull him in, and I knock my opponent down. So his stance has been compromised. He's been knocked down to his ass. Okay? When we both go to get up together, I'm looking for my training partner's waist. Okay? And from here, now, I can put him down to the floor. Okay? It's from situations like this that we can start now to score. That's a jiu-jitsu score. Okay? I started with a classic jiu-jitsu sweep, double kouchi. We knocked him down and compromised his base, his stance, and then we finished with a lock around our training partner's legs, worked our way up to the waist and went behind him, and then scored with a jiu-jitsu position. So you could see what's happening there. There's a merging of jiu-jitsu and wrestling. The jiu-jitsu is used to knock an opponent down and compromise their base. And then from there, wrestling is used to actually get a top position. Then it's back into jiu-jitsu to actually get the scoring position, since typically the final positions of wrestling don't score in jiu-jitsu. And what you can see here is there's a merging of grip and movement from two different sports. Jiu-jitsu, as it were, opens the way. We start with fairly classic jiu-jitsu moves. Say, for example, half guard. A classic jiu-jitsu move would be a knee lever, where I come in on my training partner, switch my legs across, and get my opponent's base broken with a move that most people would recognize as a simple knee lever. Then from a situation like so, we start posting, coming up on our training partner. As he turns to face us, we're in a position now to get to that locked double. Okay, as he tries to get away from us, we sprawl and do all the things that people do. We're in the perfect position.